All right, here we go. Welcome back to the Four Score Podcast. We are in Port Clinton, Ohio, with one of the biggest legends in the game. The, not owner anymore, but Zink calls, Avian X, host of DUTV.
Yep, that's right.
Mr. Fred Zink.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
This place is gorgeous here.
Thank you.
We're at Zink's Duck Camp, and we got quite the property.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what goes into all this out here? Can you kind of explain what we're sitting on here?
Yeah. So we bought this thing in 2009. It was an old house built here in the late 1800s here, old farmstead, and this is basically a farm field. And my background with my parents and my dad was excavating, and so we used to do wetland construction prior to me starting Zink calls and greenhead gear, Avian X, and things like that. So we actually bought this farm field, and we had visions of, we wanted a place to where we could call our own, number one. I think it's everybody's passion to own their own hunting dirt. Growing up and getting permission, knocking on doors, leasing land. There's nothing like owning your own dirt. And we talked about that earlier today. And we bought it with the visions of it being really good. We didn't know for sure. A lot of people said we were kind of crazy, but my dad was still in the excavating business at that time, and we had moved up here. We moved up here from southern Ohio in 2006. So my dad still had a bunch of equipment. He brought it up here, so we did all the excavating here ourselves, actually. And so we built this up, and it's 54 acres, and currently we got 4 impoundments, and we have a deer food plot in one, but 4 waterfowl impoundments. They're about 10 to 11 acres apiece, so when we're fully flooded, we have about 41 acres of water surface here. And I'd like to be able to hit a clicker to see how many ducks starting when we flood in September all the way through hunting season. Mm-hmm. And then with the mild winter that we were having, Joe, they don't migrate. Yeah. We have ducks even past duck season. Yep. And then, in January this year, we had thousands of pintails. Well, they should be in Mexico or Arkansas or Louisiana. They were already up here this far north. Yeah. And in the springtime, it's not uncommon to hold 10, 15, 20,000 ducks here, 24/7. They just don't leave in the springtime, late winter, springtime. And but we still, late November, 5,000 to 10,000 on a good day, but consistently 5,000 to 7,000 ducks come here every day.
That's pretty good.
And it's really good hunting, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, everything you showed me, it's like, man, I bet there's some shit that gets killed here. And I'm sure you guys can see behind us all the deer mounts. And a couple of these have been shot.
Yeah, Gunner killed that one right there. It's a 180. He killed that on this property. All these deer here have been killed on our own properties that we manage for whitetail.
That kicks ass.
We have one property we've killed a couple. We killed a 211 on. We killed 184. That was a 184. 179, a couple 150s. Yeah. So it's been really good hunting. My son Gunner got me hooked on deer hunting. He really wanted to go when he was young, and so he got me hooked. I was the guy to run the trail cameras, the food plot, and all that stuff. Right. And then I went to Illinois. That deer's not here. No, it's in my house. We got deer at my house too. And the first bow kill I ever killed was 2015. And a good friend of mine said, "Hey, I'll take your son hunting out in Illinois at the Mossy Oak lease, actually." He said, "But you have to buy a bow and go too." I was like, "I really don't want to go.
Right.
I want to go, but I want to share it with my son." So bought a bow, went out there, and we had unbelievable hunting. It was like a premier whitetail property. Okay. And that's when I realized that it's like duck hunting, turkey hunting, fishing. If you got a good spot and you manage it, it's awesome. And so I left there going, okay, I can do this. This is cool. I ended up killing a 167, I think a 12, 13 pointer. I can't remember for sure, but ended up grossing 167. Yeah. And I was hooked. Yep. Yeah, so we come back, start buying dirt. Next thing you know, we're planting food plots and acting like we're the Drurys.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So you didn't get into deer hunting until later in life?
No, I grew up deer hunting when I was a kid because my dad was a deer hunter. But when I turned 16, got my driver's license, it was full go waterfowl. Yep. That's all I cared about. And it was goose hunting. Right. Duck hunting in Ohio at that point, southern Ohio, was average at best. But I grew up down in it's kind of the Great Miami Valley. So. You got the Scioto River comes all the way through central Ohio, goes down to the Ohio River, and then you have a bunch of water systems. Little Miami, the Stillwater, and the Great Miami River comes down through a system where it's called the Great Miami Valley, where I grew up, and dumps into the Ohio River. And so when you have late season geese where I grew up, especially by the time I got, I'd say, I think I killed my first goose when I was about 11 years old. So that would have been 1981. And there were very few. We talked about that. I mean, you like made the newspaper when you killed a goose down there. Now up here, there were geese in those days, but right here, not so much, or not down there. And that's when the local Canada goose population just exploded. And it was kind of like, it was fascinating because it was something that no one knew about where I lived in Ohio. Now you go start in Illinois, you go to Delaware, Maryland, you go to Horicon Marsh, Wisconsin, up where you live. You know, the geese were prevalent, you know.
Yep.
But today, there's never been more Canada geese ever in history than there is right today.
Yeah,
And, you know, there's
of
more today than there was a year ago today.
Right.
There's just the population's growing. It's a great opportunity to get out. But so goose hunting become my passion. And when we seen them geese yesterday, I said, I owe my entire life and my fortune to the old Canada goose, because that's what I'd still be driving a bulldozer probably if it wasn't for a Canada goose.
Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
All because of a frickin' bird.
All because of a bird, man.
So yeah, like how'd you get into that? I mean, obviously your dad got you into it.
Yeah, so my dad, my great-grandpa, or my grandpa was a hunter and a fisherman, owned a tackle store, and my great-grandpa owned fishing camps in northern Indiana. It's on Long Lake. It's actually a Long Lake State Park up there now, and around Albion, Indiana. And that's where my dad grew up. And it's my great-grandpa Smith, actually, and they had a fishing camp on that lake. And so I've been hunting and fishing my entire life because my entire family, that's what they did. So
that's all they did.
I never have not been an outdoorsman. Like I didn't have somebody introduce me to it in high school or college or whatever. I grew up as long as I can remember hunting and fishing.
Yep. That's how a lot of guys end up growing up too. You know?
That's right.
It's like if you grew up doing it, usually you're stuck in it for life.
Yeah.
I've never heard of a guy that's like, oh, my dad was a big hunter, I just wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, I've never really heard that.
Well, you hear about them, but they're not friends of ours. Right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I guess I don't know them and I don't want to know them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you started off just goose hunting and duck hunting with the old man.
Yep.
And then like how'd the contest call and stuff? Because you're like a renowned champion from.
Yeah, so, you know, I got into it and I was just, I think it's what attracted to me to the whole sport was the ability to call and communicate to waterfowl, right? And so I was infatuated with it. Do you ever remember Wing Supply? You remember that yellow?
Yep.
Okay, so it was an old newspaper. It was yellow.
Yep.
And man, I couldn't wait to get it. And they sent, I think, monthly or bi-monthly or whatever. I couldn't wait to get it, and I'd go through all and buy calls, and I got garbage bags full of calls that I bought that were, you know, $12, $15, $20, what have you. And so I was always into it, and that was about the time that Nightingale come out with it's called Nightingale Double Cluck, right? And then they come out with a Double Cluck Plus. And prior to that, I'd been blowing a Glen Scobie, which was a pretty good, but it was, you know, it was a conventional resident style call. They had the old sound, right?
Yep.
And so that Double Cluck came out, and it was a hard call to blow. It took me a little while to figure it out, but I figured it out, and David and Harold Knight had made a really good video that went with it. And I started blowing that thing, and man, that is about the time frame where the population of Canada geese started growing.
Yep.
And I figured that thing out. And, you know, I was talking to you earlier on the couch before we started this podcast. Back in the day, like I was one of the very, very few in Ohio that could, number one, blow a goose call.
Yep.
Because it wasn't very prevalent. And I remember, I think it was 88. Yeah, 1988, summer 88. I believe 88 season. We had a drought in Ohio. The whole Midwest had a major drought. And we had a good population of resident Canada geese, and all those geese came to this public lake that we hunted. It used to be blind draws. You go there and you draw a spot, and that was your spot for the year, right? During that year, because of low water, all the farm ponds, all the creeks, all the adjacent areas were dry. And all these Canada geese come to that lake, right? And we shot the hell out of them. But I can remember, and it sounds a little bit far-fetched, I don't think that we seen a flock of Canada geese that entire season that I didn't call in.
Nice.
I mean, that was like, if you could see them, all you had to do was see them.
Yeah,
you
they're
could call them
coming
in.
Yep.
And we started hunting. So when I grew up, duck season, a lot of people don't remember, but duck season was 30 days when I grew up. 30 days and 3 here in the Mississippi Flyway. And then we went to a point system, but, you know, we got 3 frameworks, 30 and 3, 45 and 4, and 60 and 6. That's the 3 frameworks that we have here in the Mississippi Flyway. And when I grew up, it was 30 and 3. So duck season would go out in 30 days, and then there was all these Canada geese that nobody knew anything about. They didn't know how to hunt them. They didn't know how to call them. They didn't know nothing. And we had a boat blind. I had met a bunch of guys in the calling circuit that had boat blinds that used to hunt. It was Barty Califf, and a bunch of those guys that competed in calling contests. But they'd hunt all over Nebraska and go all those public reservoirs out in the Midwest and Niobrara on the river there. And they had what they called plate boats, custom plate boats built. So we bought us a 20-foot Duracraft boat. That was the same year I'm at Grounds. Bought it in 1989, actually.
Oh, really?
And we went down and picked that boat up and brought it back. It's actually Duracraft was the original War Eagle boats.
Okay.
So the
I
Ward
remember those.
family originally had Duracraft boats.
Okay.
And they ended up selling that in Conway, Arkansas, and then started War Eagle like after their non-compete was up 3, 4, 5 years later, whatever. But so we built us a boat blind on that boat. We still have it, actually. Gunner's going to be doing some work on it, and we had a boat blind on it. And we used to run big rigs, 100, 150 honker decoys on the water after duck season was over, and then when it would freeze, instead of going on the field hunting, we had a bunch of shell decoys. We had probably 150, 200 shell decoys. And a lot of the reservoirs around us would have big open spots. And so in the center of the lake, there'd always be 2, 3, 4, 5,000 honkers, and they'd go out to the fields. But instead of going out in the fields and mess with them, kind of like what we talked earlier, instead of hunting the juice, we would hunt in between.
Yep, correct.
And if you hunt them in between, from point A to point C, they fly every day, as long as you hunt them in B. But if you hunt A or C, it's
over.
done.
Yeah, like I was telling you, I made a little video about that too. Like if you can get permission for the X field, leave that sucker and hunt the X or hunt the traffic around it.
100%. We'd always go get and tie it up and then never hunt it, until we had to.
Yep, because you hunt that X field the one time, it's over with.
Yeah, so we'd
Basically.
go out and put big ice rigs out.
Nice.
And we'd take nails, spike nails, drive them in the ice, if we didn't have snow, so the wind wouldn't blow them. And we'd set 150, 200 shell decoys on the ice.
Oh, God.
And, dude, it was, my dad would go, we worked construction and excavating. I graduated high school in 88, and I worked for the family business. So in the wintertime, when it got that cold, we couldn't move dirt or do anything. So we were basically laid off, working on equipment, getting ready for the springtime. So we would go every day of the goose season, late season, and man, we shot so many geese, and it was fun,
Oh, I believe it.
So that's how I kind of got going in the deal.
Right.
And then, so I'd hunted deer and pheasants. Hold on.
Maximus is freaking out.
Yeah, it's my trusty duck dog there.
Yeah, right.
But with that said, it all kind of took off, and now I'm at Grounds in '89. We had a boat up on Lake Michigan, Benton Harbor, St. Joseph, and we fished for salmon.
Okay.
And there was a flyer there or we seen at a local tackle store. It said the U.S. Goose calling competition. I was like, man, I want to get into goose calling.
Yeah.
You answer your question on how to get started in that.
Right.
And so at that time, I was blowing a double cluck, and I thought it was pretty damn good. And so my dad and I, this is in Michigan City, Indiana, not far, probably 30-minute drive from where our boat was, where we salmon fished all the time. We drove down there on a Saturday, and Tim Grounds is there, Sean Mann, Keith McGowan, Al Dagger, Randy Bartz is there. Nice. Like some of the people that I ended up becoming really, really close to through all those years I met that weekend. Dale Fleming was a champion caller. He'd won a bunch of contests. Adam Rametta, Brian Sullivan. And I'm talking about those names are the people that basically won every calling contest they got into in those days, right? So I got to meet all those guys and do that. And then that's the day that I found out that I didn't know how to blow a goose call.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right.
All right, and we're back. The neighbor stopped by, so we had to holler at him a little bit.
Yeah.
But all right. So, anyways, you're talking about all these guys in contest calling. Realized you weren't as good as you thought.
Yeah, that's when I found out I didn't know how to blow a goose call for sure.
Right.
I just thought I did at that point.
Right.
I left there and I figured out that I got some practice to do.
Yeah. So that was your first contest there.
I did. Well, we just went and watched.
Yeah. Oh, you watched it? You
I
weren't
just
even
went
in
and
it?
watched. Yeah, I'd never blown in a calling contest, nothing. And that was in '89. And I ended up meeting Grounds, and I ended up buying some Guide's Best Goose Calls from him, right? So, and he was teaching me. Grounds used to smoke like a train, man. And Grounds got the curliest hair, and his hat was always bent in like this, and he had this big afro. And I remember this is my first impression of grounds. I went up, I was bought a call, and he goes, "All right, kid, show me what you can do." Of course, I never blew a flute in my life. I was blowing a double cluck, so I was trying to learn how to break it. And he was smoking a cigarette. He took a big drag off a cigarette, and he blew that goose call. And it literally was like a fire extinguisher in my face with smoke coming through it. He had a white guide's best. It was just like knocked me off my seat, you know. I was like, wow, this is a unique experience right here.
Right. Okay. Looked like a train.
And then, yeah, it was pretty cool. And then, so I bought, I think about a dozen goose calls. I said, hey, I got a bunch of friends. I want to sell goose calls for you or whatever, but I got a bunch of people. And he said, well, I'll give you, I think he gave me $5 off. They were $35.
Yep.
He sold them to me for $30. And I went home, and like 2 days later, I called him up and I said, hey, I sold all them goose calls. Can I buy some more? He's like, you sold them all? I mean, how'd you do that? I was like, well, I got a bunch of friends or whatever. Like, nobody in Ohio knew how to blow a goose call, right? So it was just like selling crack at that point.
Right.
In the inner city. It was pretty easy.
Yeah, right.
And so I called him up and I said, hey, my uncle and I are come down to Decoy to buy a boat. We're going to drive through there. And you mind if I stop at your house?
Yeah.
And that's where he lived down in, I can't remember the address. It was Burnham Road. And we stopped down there, and I bought, I think, 3 dozen goose calls. And he sold it to me for $25 that time or whatever.
Yeah,
that's how I met grounds. That's how I got going. And then, so I started practicing. So that would have been in 89. I think it was like summertime 89, because we've been salmon fishing like June, July. And so I practiced all that year and used this goose call, didn't blow the nightingale double cluck any longer, and blew that flute. And then the following year in September, so it had been 1990, would have been my first calling contest, goose calling contest. And then I blew it, actually, where I took you yesterday when we went that little tour. Remember I said there was a waterfowl festival? We'd seen the lake?
Yeah.
There used to be a waterfowl festival right there. It was a nice clean park, and there was a waterfowl festival, and that's when the state goose calling contest was. And I live, 3 hours south of here.
Yeah.
And I come up and blew it in 1990. So it was our first calling contest. I won the state championship there. And then I just kept getting better and better, and then working with Tim, and then I showed you some of them catalogs or whatever. I started selling grounds calls. So I used to go to peddle them, all the outdoor waterfowl festivals around here. I used to go to every one of them, and I was known as the grounds guy around here.
Nice. So at that point, you were guiding for grounds, though, right?
Yeah, by 92, I think by 92, I started guiding, 92 or 93. I started guiding for grounds down at Burns's Hunt Club.
Yep,
and,
selling calls for him and stuff like that.
Exactly. And then started competing. And, I actually got my start in contest calling. That was my first goose calling contest, but I started in duck calling contest before that.
Oh, okay.
And so I was blowing both duck and goose. And I blew Carlson championship calls, Wendell Carlson from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I was blowing in all the duck calling contests. And then I blow in a random goose calling contest, but I was mainly focused on duck calling. And it was really cool and fun until I got good enough on a duck call that I could win pretty quick.
Yeah.
As you well know, once you qualify in the duck calling contest, you're done until Arkansas, in Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, punch your ticket, it's over.
Yeah, you get a ticket to the bus, they call it. And that's what kind of sucked, because I enjoyed going to the contest and competing. And once I got good enough I could win fairly early in the year, then the rest of the year I can go to the calling contest.
Yeah,
right?
you're done. Yep.
So about that time, goose calling, the prizes for a winning duck calling contest is usually a couple $100 and your ticket to go to Blowing the World.
Yep.
The goose calling was like $500, or somewhere $1,000. I'm like, I think I'm getting this goose calling stuff.
You're
so
right.
I started practicing, started going to the goose calling contest, and that's when, once I figured that out, I think the difference between duck calling and goose calling, because there wasn't a lot of meat calling contests back in the day for duck, is that I felt that the more I practiced on my duck call for contest duck calling, I wouldn't say the worse I got at calling ducks, but I got further and further and further away from what you actually do when you call ducks.
Right, correct.
Totally different,
Right, yep.
But I found when I was blowing my goose call, it was very similar. The notes are same. A lot of the rhythms are same. You're not blowing a routine when you're calling geese.
Right.
But the rhythms and the sounds you put together, and I had a little recorder system almost like you got on the table right here. And I'd go January, February, I'd get up every morning on the weekend, when I wasn't working construction or whatever, and I'd head to the refuge, and I'd sit out amongst all the geese, and I'd record them and listen to them. And I built a lot of my routines. I told you when I first got into goose calling, there were two people in the Midwest that were typically winning them all, and that was Tim Grounds,
Yep.
and it was Alan McCree.
Yep.
And so when I started winning, I was playing a hybrid song of those two guys.
Mm-hmm.
I sounded a lot like Alan McCree, but there was some things. Grounds he could do some incredible stuff on a goose call. He just could do it 3 times in a row.
Right.
You know, because he didn't practice. His practice was he was tuning goose calls every day, but the man had so much talent, it was unbelievable. So I would take some of the cool stuff he did, and Grounds put a little sprinkle on ice cream, he'd say. and Alan was blow the same routine 3 times.
Yep.
Pretty goose sounds. But he wasn't fancy, but he was consistent. He could do it all 3 rounds. He was hard to beat because of that. But Grounds, he had all the fancy stuff.
Yep.
And so what I did is blow that solid goose sound like Alan had, that was clean and crisp. And I mean, the first time I heard Alan McCree blow a goose call, I told you in Reelfoot Lake, Tennessee, the hair on the back of my neck stood up.
Right.
That's the first time I'd ever heard someone. I mean, all those guys were unbelievable on the goose call, but that was the first time that I heard someone blow a goose call that sound. I was like, that sounds
Holy
like
shit.
a live Canada goose standing there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just the hollowness and the deepness and just the overall nasally sound. I was like, holy shit, right? And so I just, to be honest with you, I sang their song for a couple years, and then once I get to where I could compete or be close to winning, and I'd won a couple of them at that point, I spent a bunch of time out listening to live Canada geese. And you asked me yesterday when we were talking, he said, you know, how much has the goose calling routines changed now to when you was doing it? Be honest with you, when I quit to right now, I hear the same rhythms
Yep.
that I wouldn't say I invented, but a lot of the rhythms that like Alan did or Tim did or I come up with. Certain segments, to be honest with you, are in almost all the top callers right now. It's the same kind of rhythm, right? And but I learned a lot from listening to the live Canada geese themselves. And I learned, you learn a lot calling Canada geese, you know, hunting them and day in, day out. But I've learned more from, I'm a big believer in, number 1, sounding like a goose, but number 2, calling geese how geese call geese and when they call, and if they're lessers or honkers or time of year or how cold it is. It all varies.
Yep.
And I always said, setting decoy rigs or calling what you see or hear on Fridays, what you do on Saturday morning.
Yep.
And I'm a big believer in natural and being realistic as possible.
Yeah, when to call and all that stuff.
Read the geese.
Yep, correct.
Read the geese or the ducks, you know.
Yep. So you get into selling calls for grounds, you're guiding with them, and then that's when you ran into Fred Zink. Because not Fred Zink, you are Fred Zink. When you ran into...
I ran into him about 1970.
Yeah, right. When you ran into Jeff Foyles.
Yeah. I told you the story.
Yeah.
This is kind of sideline. I hope Foyles listens to this. He'll remember it. So me and my old man, we go down, we're hunting Sonny Jackson's a goose club, right?
Yeah.
And I'd been there a year before with grounds, and the grounds in Sullivan. And we were there. We had a cut-up time. It was a really good time. We had a place called Hamburger Hill, and it was up on this hillside, and we was sitting in this fence row, and it was right up on. And it's Irish Hills of Michigan, real rolly hill. And you get up there, and we called it Hamburger Hill because when they come across there, it was just a done deal. And we were in this fence row, we just wiping them out. And so I went back the next year. I took my dad because I wanted him to see it, and my dad's he's the one that really probably instilled the goose hunting in me. From the standpoint of, there's other people out there that like to hunt and shoot Canada geese as much as my dad, but I don't think anymore.
Right.
I mean, he's he was a diehard goose hunter, period. He'd shoot ducks, but he would rather shoot one goose than 20 ducks.
Yep.
And so I took him up there. We pull up this pit, and it's froze. There's ice in it. It's all messed up. Snow fence froze around because Sonny Jackson, great guy, laziest guy you ever run up on, right? And he never had anything. So we'd show up and had to clean everything up. And there was one fence post Foyles couldn't get out. And this is the first time I met Foyles. And he backs up. You get this red pickup truck with a red camper top on it or whatever. And my dad grew up as, poor and worked his ass off his entire life, excavating, farmer, did whatever. A lot of common sense.
Right.
And Foyles gets out, wraps his chain around this fence post and wraps around his hitch. And he gets his truck. My dad just looked at me and goes, watch this.
Frozen
I go,
ground,
watch
too.
this. He goes, this ain't going to go good. Foyles puts it in drive. And, just hammers it like that, jerks that fence post out, and it goes right through his camper top window. and right out the top of his window, and like the chain stopped and it went all the way through like an arrow.
Oh my
If
God.
Foils gets out, he's cussing, he's madder than hell, right? So I think that was 90. I think I met Foils in 92. I think it was 93, 92 or 93.
Yeah.
And then we hunted, pretty much all of January together that year, and guiding, or most of January, a little bit of February, and during them 25, 30 days hanging out with Foils, we were like,
Yeah.
I'd come out there and have me one of my new best friends.
Right, yeah. He said that same thing because I did a podcast with him too. And he was
Yeah.
like, yeah, me and Zink, we used to have our kids played together and
Oh, yeah.
girlfriends hung out all the time.
Gunner and Cole grew up together.
Yeah,
Yep. Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yep. And I guess Zink calls, like when did that start? I always ask everybody this because I know Tim Ground's got a little bucky when guys branched off on their own.
Oh, yeah. And he had a lot of them. I mean, you look at Foils, and then, I did it. I
Yep.
made my own calls, Trinan,
Yep.
Kelly Powers.
Yep.
There's been a slew of them. I mean, there's more than that, but
Yeah.
Grounds was the godfather of goose hunting in the Midwest for sure. Goose calling for sure, 100%. Maybe in the world,
Right,
100%. You got Sean Mann that did his deal on the East Coast and had his nucleus. But when it comes to the Midwest, which is, to be honest with you, a lot bigger than the East Coast as far as all the people,
Yep.
Grounds was the godfather of all that, and everybody pretty much got their start with Tim.
Yep.
Sean Stahl did, then
Yep.
he went on to Foils and made this call now at Rich and Tone or whatever. So a lot of world champions come out of that Grounds stable. He was just a guy. He lived it every day, contest calling. He not only made goose calls to call and hunt geese, but he made goose calls and was dedicated contest caller. He loved it every day. It's what he did, So, so I was wanting to work with Grounds. Him and I had done a lot of stuff together, and I tried to get him to give me a job. I was doing construction excavating, and I wanted to dig my last hole at some point.
Right, correct.
And so I wanted to get into the what I love, my passion, hunting. And at that time, I had been in partnerships with Ron Latchaw at Final Approach,
Okay.
building blinds and doing some of that, and Final Approach Outdoors, which is all the bags and accessories and stuff like that. But I wanted to go work for Grounds, and him and I went back and forth a couple times about it, and I wanted to kind of like head up the duck call side of things. You know what I mean? Because that time I had placed third runner-up, second runner-up, and third runner-up, or third runner-up and fourth runner-up. I can't remember in the World Championship, blowing contest calling, and so I had a passion for the duck side, and. He just didn't want to grow his business anymore.
Well, he didn't really have duck calls either, right?
He did not.
Yeah,
He had one, the hen talk or
Yep,
whatever,
yep.
and it was a double reed. It was an okay call at that point, but I thought we could really do something because
Yeah,
the duck call
do more.
market was a lot bigger than the goose call market, per se. And man, we talked back and forth, and we thought we were going to do it. And he's like, man, I just want to keep it small and this and that weather. Plus, he had Hunter coming up, right?
Yep.
Hunter is a little bit of a side note there, but Hunter is the reason why I have kids. I mean, I would eventually have them, but I remember we were down at the World Open Goose Calling Contest, and Hunter's mom, Shelly, and Grounds were running late. And he goes, hey, why don't you take Hunter going down to the show? We'll be down in a little bit. And my wife and I were married at that time. We'd been married a couple years. And long story short, we took Hunter down there and hung out with him pretty much all day or whatever. And I left there. I was like, this time. Like,
Yeah, right.
Hunter was cool as hell,
Yeah,
right?
right. That kicks ass.
And so, but long story short, fast forward, I had started a mail order catalog, and we're selling calls, Grounds calls is what we sold. We're selling some Foils calls, and I just had a ton of requests. How I sold so many Grounds calls was I would retune them. Not saying that Tim couldn't tune them, he could, but Tim would always tune a pretty stiff call. You know what I mean? When you buy a normal Grounds call, a lot of times it's stiff.
Yeah.
It's contest quality,
Correct.
stiff. You
Yeah.
got to know what the hell you're doing.
Yep.
And he was selling so many calls and was so busy. I was that's my passion, my sideline as well. I would custom tune them for guys. So
Yep.
they call up and go, hey, I want, a little soft, a little high pitched, a little deeper, a little easier to blow. Hey, I got my 14-year-old grandson that wants to call. And so I would tune the flutes or the super mags or the half breeds to kind of match what they're doing. So I was like custom tuning the Grounds calls.
Right,
and we
right.
were selling the hell out of them. And so I had a lot of requests from people that said, hey, why don't you make calls? Like, nah, I don't really want to do that or whatever.
Right.
But I also didn't want to do excavating the rest of my life.
Correct. Yep.
So in 2000, I'd made my decision. I made a duck call, actually the XR2. This one right here, that's one of the original brass band ones. Some of these calls now sell, I see them sell for $2,000-$3,000.
Damn.
That's the original cut on old Bridgeport mill, and that's the original stamp brass band. That cost probably worth $2,000-$3,000 right there.
Jeepers.
But I made that. It was a double reed. It was a modified D2 Old with a double reed and kind of a twist of. So like right now, it's real popular to blow a cut down call.
Yep.
That's what that call is.
Yep.
In 2000, a lot of people were making cut down calls. Kurt McCullough was one of them. He made some. I got some of these calls, and he made the video. You ever seen Green Timber Mallards?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's him blowing it.
Yep.
In
It's one of the best duck videos of all time.
Dude,
Right.
killer.
Right.
And so I had modified some D2 Ults or whatever, and because it was just such a cool sound, and I don't know how I did it. I had been working on making a goose call for like 6 months, but I wanted to be something different. I didn't want to knock someone off. You
Right,
know,
correct,
I figured if I couldn't bring something to the market different, then I wasn't going to do it.
Right.
So after about 6 months, I was like, I got to have a break from this. This is not going the direction I want to go in.
Right.
And so I started working on a duck call, and within 2 or 3 days, I had that thing. It was just like somebody, God handed it down and said, here you go, bud.
Yeah.
This is going to work for you.
Yeah,
Because no one had ever did a keyhole D2 modified old
Yep.
with 2 reeds.
Yep.
And it just worked. And so that was my first duck call. I sold them in spring of 2000 down in Nashville, or Memphis, Tennessee at the DU Great Outdoor Festival.
Oh, nice.
That was spring 2000. And then I think it came out with a goose call a year later.
Nice.
Like 2001. But
Nice.
yeah, I made that call to grounds. And
Yeah.
he wasn't happy, but he understood. And
Yeah.
we worked out. We never missed a beat. You know
Right.
what I mean? As far as we've had always remained friends. He's a classic dude.
So
yeah.
that was right. So that was
2000.
the life of Zink calls right there.
Yep, started in
So
2000.
then you design a goose
my
call.
basement.
Did you
Yep.
just come out with one goose call, or did you come
Yeah,
out with a couple?
SR1.
Yeah, SR1, and then one duck call too. You didn't have a
Yep, I
couple
had
of
the
variations.
XR2 and the SR1.
Oh, nice.
The SR1, the thought process there was a lot of people that wanted to blow a short reed, but were used to blowing a flute. And I was trying to come up with somewhat of a hybrid
Yep.
to where it blew like a short reed, but your hand positioning and stuff was like a flute.
Yep. Okay.
So instead of blowing open-handed like you do a super mag or any short reed today,
Yep.
on the SR1 you don't blow it like that, like Big Sean could,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's got catcher mitts hands,
Yeah, right.
you know. But
Big
the
ass
average
paws.
cat cannot blow that way.
Right.
You have to blow it into your hand, much like you would an 850 flute or a
Yep.
Shoreman or flute. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it was kind of a hybrid. That was my analogy, trying to make a goose call that was a hybrid between a flute and a short reed.
Correct.
And that's the SR1.
Nice. So you start making them things in the basement of your house, you were saying?
Yep.
And then what were you like doing all the work of polishing
Yep.
and engraving
Yeah,
and all
100%.
that stuff and
Yep.
painting? You ever have Dawn come downstairs like paint these 300 calls?
She was I always said we were a perfect couple. I made the phone ring and she answered it. 'Cause
Nice.
I was off guiding, hunting, doing this stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
And she was there answering the phone, taking care of the kids. Gunner, you were born in 2000, were you? Yeah. So he was born the same year we started Zink Calls.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
So then from the basement, you were telling me, like, I guess how'd you run into meeting like the Hundo brothers and Big Sean, and how'd you put that crew together?
Yeah. So I was still Field Huddle was my first employee, and I know him from calling contests. He blew a Carl Lossman call.
Yep.
And I had met Big Sean up in Indiana. I'm trying to think of the name of that contest up there. I was up there with Foils and a bunch of guys. I had met Big Sean in there. He blew into like the novice calling contest or whatever. And so I had met those guys. And so Zink started in my basement. And then we had construction and excavating shop. So we had places, you know, for equipment, stuff like that. And we had my old man was a pack rat.
Yeah.
Everything had a value. He grew up poor.
Yeah, right.
And everything had a value, and someday I'm going to need that
Yep.
analogy. And the original Zink call shop was in that part of the barn that was this catch-all.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about, like, it took me weeks to clean it out.
clear that
And
place
him and
out.
I were nose to nose many a time, about ready to fist fight, because I was throwing stuff away that I knew we were never going to use.
Right,
and
exactly.
he was sure we were going to use it.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, we almost come to blows a couple times on that,
Damn.
the original Zink call shop.
I believe it.
So I got that thing going, and it was only, I think it was 12 or 1,500 square feet, something like that.
Oh,
But we built machine shops. So we actually built this machine shop. Dayton, Ohio is where I grew up. So inside the city limits of Dayton, Ohio, there's like 600 tool shops inside the city limits of Dayton, Ohio, because General Motors is in that area, and all these people were making parts for General Motors.
Yep.
So there's machining, CNC machining was everywhere. We had actually built this tool shop for this good friends of ours, and they ended up making the zinc calls for their first couple years.
Oh, wow.
And they would do all the turning and all that stuff, and then I'd pick them up. And at that point, there was no engraving. You know what I mean? This just wasn't like all the original calls, I hand signed all the wood ones, and acrylics didn't have any logo on to begin with. And then we eventually started doing that later. But we'd bring them in raw, and I do all the polishing and all that stuff. And I hired a little help here, you know, for the neighborhood kids to help me do this or whatever. But no, I think we made 300 duck calls and 300 goose calls the first runs, and we thought that was like a year's supply. And it was lasted like a month.
Right.
And we were sold out.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, oh, man, this is going to go, you know? So I remember the first year in sales, I think we did $75,000, $80,000 first year, you know, and that was, we didn't get our first call till it was like June, July.
Dang.
You know, and so the next year, I think we did like $150,000 in call sales.
So doubling.
Yeah, and I was still working construction and excavating, and then doing this on the side. We had the mail order catalog. And then I started designing blinds for Avery, like the finisher blind and the Power Hunter and a bunch of that product about the same time. That's 2001 actually. And so at that point we were up and rolling, and zinc calls taking off, and I hired Field. We moved up here in 2006, so I would say I hired Field around 2002 or 3, somewhere right in there. And he was our first employee. And then I think about a year later, I hired Clay Hudnall, his brother. And then, you know, Brig Sean joined the team, competitive caller and all that. And we were up and rolling, and we're doing our 24/7 DVD series. I actually sent, Field always had a passion for doing filming and editing and things like that. So we sent him off to, it was called the International School of Broadcast. And he would go take classes and do all that stuff, learn how to edit. And we put an editing suite in our call shop down there. And then we just started hiring people. It just started growing. Like, you couldn't make enough. We were basically doubling every year. We were growing 40 to 50% every year. So whatever we made this year, next year we made double. And what really got us going is I opened injection molded for the original power clucker. It's kind of crazy. The PC1 power clucker injection molded, I opened that mold 2002 or 3, 2003 maybe, 2 or 3. We still sell that call today, 21 years later.
I believe it.
And we've probably sold, I don't know, 1.5 million of them.
Whoa.
Like that, in that period
Pretty
of time.
Good.
Yeah, like a lot of them.
That is a lot of them.
We were selling, like, for a while, Walmart, we were selling like 30, 40,000 a year just to Walmart.
Shit.
And, I mean, businesses are going like this,
Right.
And so, I mean, through the years, maybe $1 million, 750,000 to $1 million of them things. And we're still selling them today. Very easy entry-level call to blow. And that afforded us, that money was coming in. Like, I remember the year we got kind of caught with our accountants. They weren't prepared for it. The check we had to write to the federal government. I'm like, it's time to get a new accountant. I'm done with this deal. And so then it started growing. And in 2006, we built a facility up here in Port Clinton. We moved up here. Twofold is the reason why we moved here. Number one, Dayton, Ohio was not known for a waterfowl capital of the world. You know, there was good goose hunting, duck hunting was average. There was much better places, and I had traveled all over the United States and Canada at that point, filming, you know, DVDs with grounds, and then also doing all the Whistle and Wink series from Lost the Oak and things like that.
I remember those.
And then the 24/7 videos that we started with Field and the boys back in the day, right?
Classics.
We had to get in an area where the abundance of waterfowl, because we were tired of traveling. We wanted to be able to go out our back door and do a bunch of the hunts as well, versus living out of living in a hotel 24/7. So we were going to move to 3 places: Port Clinton, Ohio, because the hunting's good. We're both Dawn and I are from Ohio, so we wanted to be close to the family. Minneapolis, Minnesota was on the radar. And Denver, Colorado. That was the 3 places that we looked, because, you know, we had sold a lot of calls, and there were so many waterfowl hunters in Minnesota, especially the Minneapolis area. We had a bunch of good friends there, and it just seemed to fit. And the other place we were selling, and the hunting was incredible, was Denver, Colorado. You know, it was close to Cabela's. Being in Sidney, Nebraska is only 2.5 hour drive. and the waterfowl hunting is incredible. And we had a bunch of friends and pro staffers there,
Yeah.
sportsman's warehouses kicking ass in that area. It was just a nucleus, and so we thought, it's like, man, at that point we got to assemble a calling team because we got all these guides and hunters in Minnesota and or Denver or whatever. But being Ohio born and raised,
Right.
we decided to come right here in Port Clinton, and so we built a facility in 2006 and moved up here in August 2006, right before school started, actually.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I remember seeing that in the video about
Yep.
you guys putting it together.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, back to field, did you hire field for just tuning calls
Yep.
and stuff like that?
Yep.
And then what made you think, like, hey, we should start filming? Or did you kind of always know starting Zink calls?
Oh, we always knew we were going
You're
to,
gonna
because
start-
at that point we were filming Whistling Wing stuff.
Right, I figured coming off of that, yeah.
And so we knew that there had been a little bit of a gap there between filming Whistling Wings and filming our own stuff, and
Yeah.
some other people, like Foils was filming Fallen Sky stuff.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he was getting kind of the jump on the marketing because that was a cool thing to do.
Correct.
And Foils and I had already filmed Whistling Wing stuff together,
Mm-hmm.
and then he started his own stuff, and I'm like, man, I got to kind of play. At that point, I got to play catch up,
Right, right.
you know? And so that's when we started filming 24/7 video series.
I gotcha.
Yep. And
Did-
Field was the editor.
Yep. Yeah, I remember listening to the Hail Call with Mike Benjamin, and
Yep.
Field Hundo was on there. And that was one of the most interesting podcasts I've ever listened to. Because I
Yeah.
was wondering, he's like, oh, it's kind of like in the ghetto. And I think he said he was like the only white kid there or something like that. It was like, damn. Yeah, like, holy shit. But, yeah, so that takes off. And then you guys start making, okay, hold on one second. I always wanted to know this. When Foils was making DVDs, you ever buy them and watch them?
Did I buy them and watch them? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you?
You know, like, there's a lot of times where I'd show up with my lanyard.
Yeah.
I'd have a rich and tone.
Yep.
I'd have a ground. I'd
Yeah.
have an echo.
Yeah.
I'd have different calls on there. And people are like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to be honest. I always said is, don't worry about the good stuff. Try to find the bad stuff.
Right, right.
And so I'm not the type of guy that ever sweeps dirt under the rug. I'm the guy that looks under the rug to try to find the dirt.
Right.
Because if you worry about the bad things, the good things take care of themselves.
Right.
That's just
It's a
been
great way
always
to
been
put
my
stuff.
thought process. So I always want to be honest with myself. Do we have the best goose call in my mind, or do we have the second best goose call, or
Right.
the third? Who's got better?
Yep, yep.
And so I would always blow our competitors' calls when I was hunting. I might only do it for a day or so and go, whew, we got them beat, or
Yeah,
dang,
right.
this one's a really good duck call,
Yeah,
whatever,
right, right.
What's going on? What are we missing here?
Yep, yep.
And so, yeah, we watch other people's videos. I'd buy people's calls and take them to the field and go hunting with them. Make
Yep.
sure that we were still, we never concentrated on building a contest call. That was never, even though we all had contest background and our calls won a lot of contests, we never dedicated that time to it. Grounds
right.
always did. It
Yep.
was a major part of Tim Grounds championship calls and his legacy and what he desired and loved to do. I was more of a hunter than a contest caller. Even though that I blew in a bunch of contests, won a bunch of contests, and that was kind of my roots or whatever. I enjoyed it, met a lot of great people. But I didn't sit around the table after the contest and talk about contest calling.
Right,
I sit
right,
around the table and talk about duck
Hunting
hunting,
stories
goose
and
hunting.
stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
my passion. So we always, at Zink Calls, we always wanted the most realistic sound possible. We wanted the loudest call possible with the least amount of air. So one thing I figured out early in my career of tuning calls and selling calls is if you put 50 calls out on the table and people come up and blow them, during that tuning of those calls, I would always have 4 or 5 of them that were really light to blow. Just like, for some reason, it just blow over and crack. And I was like, okay, I'm going to keep these 5 for like youth hunters.
Yep, yep.
Guy comes up with his grandson and goes, hey, I want to buy my first goose call for my 12-year-old son. I'd be like, okay, here's the 5.
Yeah.
We go to the show, then would be the first 5 to sell to adults
Yeah, right.
every time.
Yep.
And so I realized early that making a call that was easy to blow, but loud, but more importantly, easy to blow.
Yep.
Easy to blow is the best for the people.
Correct.
Loud is best for the hunting.
Correct.
Right. So
Yep.
when we designed, we took call design. I took it personal. I remember our machinist Mike Ducrow. He'd be like, "What are we doing today?" Same thing as we did the last 4 days. We're trying to figure out this duck call tone channel.
Yep.
And I spent, it wouldn't be uncommon to do 200, 150, 100 tone channels,
Shit.
250 tone channels
Damn.
to get it right.
Yeah. To get the
Because
one.
Like what we're talking about decoys last night, Joe. What we talked about is it doesn't matter if you make one good one. Can you make 10,000
Right,
like that?
Right.
And what you find when you're making duck calls, especially goose calls, not so much, somewhat, but not so much, but duck calls. Once you find one that works, and you're like, okay, that's it. Make another one just like it. Okay, it blows good. Make one more like it. Okay, we got it. All right, now move the key cutter up 2,000ths.
Yep.
Move it down 2,000ths. Move it back 2,000ths. And what we would do, we would find out the sweet spot. The sweet spot might not be the best sounding call, but it'd be close. But as that machine would warm up through the day, the calls all sounded the same.
Okay.
So what we would do is move things around and try to find out where everything, so okay, +2 is here, -2 is here. So if we go in the middle, if the machine warms up, goes this way or goes this way, we're still good.
Yep.
But if you're up here and it goes this way, it sounds like shit.
Yeah.
If it comes here, it sounds pretty good. This here is an inconsistency will drive you nuts and make a bad product.
Yep.
So we always spent a bunch of time to make calls that were very consistent and then calls that were easy for the average guy. The hunter, we sold, you don't sell calls to contest callers.
No.
You give them to them, right?
Right, yeah.
You sell calls to a guy who wants to be more effective in the field.
Right, correct. There's too low of a number of contest
Yeah,
callers.
oh yeah,
anyways,
and they're all free.
Right, exactly.
If they're good, you're giving them to them.
Right. So you guys start making DVDs. You got calls going on. How did you guys get in? Because I remember being young, and I told you this, that I remember going into a Walmart when they had a hunting section back when Walmart sold guns, and looking like 24/7. It's in the blood. What is this? And it's Zink. And I remember seeing all you guys on there. Like, how'd you guys get into Walmart?
We got into Walmart through Mossy Oak to begin
okay.
with. Yeah,
That would make
and
sense.
then we actually set it up. They kind of introduced us, Scott Strickland, because
Yeah.
the Whistling Wings deal was kind of falling off. Okay, and we started making ours, and a cuss come to me and said, "Hey, Walmart wants the Whistling Wings. We're kind of done doing that series.
Yeah.
How about we, I'll say something to you, to them about your DVD." I was like,
Yeah,
"I
sounds
love
good.
that."
Yeah.
So they did it, and then we were selling Greenhead gear items to them through Avery Greenhead Gear, and so we actually set it up. So I didn't have to be a lone vendor. Walmart didn't like single SKU vendors. We actually set them SKUs up through Avery Greenhead Gear under their PO system and their UP system and all that.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's how we got in there. We were selling a bunch of stuff to them through Greenhead Gear.
Okay, that makes sense. So now you start making goose decoys too.
Yep.
Yeah. You told me your dad was a carver.
Yeah. So my dad, I went to school with a girl, and her dad was a champion carver. His name was Charlie Prince.
Yeah.
And so that first year in May of 2000, when I sold my first XR2 duck calls when I was down in Memphis, Tennessee, I knew a bunch of guys through Mossy Oak. Okay, and Mossy Oak and Avery were real tight in those days, and Avery had a crawfish boil, and we went there. I got to meet some guys or whatever, and I had this design of a fold-up lay-down blind. It was a finisher. I actually bent it, did all the aluminum work myself, did all the bending, and I sit in the kitchen with my sister-in-law and her sewing machine. I bought some cotton, like you make cotton pants out of shadow grass.
Nice.
And I made the original Final Approach, or the original Avery finisher blind right then.
Yep.
And so I had it, and I met Tom Matthews. I met some of the guys, and they go, "Hey, you ever think about joining another team, this, whatever?" I said, "I got this ground blind. I'm trying to get latch all. We talked about, doing a fold-up blind or whatever." He said, "Man, I got an opportunity. Would you be interested in introducing it to Avery?" I was like, "Yeah, I love it." So that was in May of 2000. And I went and seen him and showed him, and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing the next hour?" So I was like, "Well, I'm supposed to be at the show." And then he goes, "Hey, we got our sales group in here, AMS, Advanced Marketing Systems. It used to be the Mossy Oak Sales Group."
Okay.
And they said, "They're coming in and do some stuff review. Would you mind giving us a little bit of a tutorial on how
like
this
a
blind
rundown
works?"
on it. Yep.
I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to do that." So I stayed there, and those guys come in. I show them how it worked, and Tom Matthew goes, how about we make a deal? I'll call you next week." So we called up and we made a royalty agreement, not non-employee royalty agreement, and we started producing the finisher blinds.
Nice.
Yep. And I was a royalty-based subcontractor. I was still doing dirt work and doing my excavating stuff and building calls.
Yep.
And then that was in 2001 by the time we got in production. And the spring, about a year later, it was probably May of 2002, I went to work full time for Avery Green Headgear.
Okay. So that's where it came from. Like, hey, we're going to make decoys then.
Yeah, I made the Power Hunter blind, and we had Sean Stahl, and we started making all the Green Headgear decoys, because they're like, what do you think the next thing we should make? I was like, man, we need to make decoys. And they're like,
Yeah.
I mean, how are we going to do that with G&H?
Right.
You know, that was the 800-pound gorilla as far as quality.
Yep.
And you got Bigfoot
Yep.
on the goose side. I was like, well, my analogy is, let's make a decoy that actually looks like a duck or goose. Because, man, Bigfoot,
Durable, but not the most realistic thing you've ever seen. You know.
they were the best of their time.
Yeah.
No question.
Right.
Like, they revolutionized
Yeah.
goose decoys.
Oh, yeah.
No question about it.
Yep.
Full bodies. But the duck decoys in the market actually sucked. Like, G&H had a very durable decoy. The paint was good. You couldn't beat it off. But the carving sucked. They didn't look like a real duck. And I always thought the Bigfoot kind of looked like a goose. I was like, man, that's really cool compared to everything else. But then once I started photographing and studying Canada geese and measuring them, whatever, I realized that Bigfoots were way out of proportion.
Yeah, right,
really,
correct.
and truly.
Yeah.
You know, they're like 31 inches long, but they're about this big around. And like,
Yep.
you put that, it's way out of
Right.
whack.
Head straight up, plug legs in.
Yeah. But it was better than anything out
Yeah,
there.
correct. Yeah.
So, long story short, we started carving decoys in 2002. So, put it in the spec. 2002, we shipped our first decoys. Okay.
You shipped them over to China to get.
No, we shipped them in the United States. We
I
actually
gotcha.
had made molds, shipped them.
Yep.
2002. None of them had green headgear on. We made a private label for Cabela's, Bass Pro. No, just Bass Pro and Max Prairie Wings. Actually
Okay.
had their logos on them.
Nice.
And we got the process figured out in 2003. We started shipping them under green headgear. And 2004, you got to think about this. And so we went from 2002, the first ones we shipped, 2003, 2004. So, you know, a 40-foot container you see on a railway,
Yeah, correct.
great big 40-foot container. That's the year I spent 157 days in China. It was 2004.
Okay.
We shipped 457 containers of decoys.
Shit.
We were producing 25,000 completed decoys a day.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
God,
So we
man.
went from, zero
Yeah,
in,
right.
in 2002, 3, 4. So our third year,
Yeah.
we were the largest decoy manufacturer in the world.
That's insane.
And
dude.
it was insane how quick it
Yeah.
grew.
So let's get into that then. So you get a carving. All right. This is the wood carving that we're gonna have. You paint him
Yep.
how you want to, and then so you didn't just take it right over to China. Did you guys send it over there? How's
Yeah, we
that?
ship it.
How's the
So-
China process kind of work?
The
And
ri-
what made you get over there?
Well, making decoys in the U.S. is very expensive.
You're right, correct.
And, and that's a different story for a different time. I tried to do it with Avian X when I resigned from Green Headgear. I spent about 6 months of my time trying to figure out how to do it
Yeah.
in the United States and make money,
Right,
be
right.
profitable.
Right.
And I'm not saying it can't be done.
Right.
I couldn't figure it out. I
Yeah.
could even get pricing.
Right.
I couldn't get somebody that would really dedicate and to move forward with it.
Right. Right.
And so then I eventually said, okay, I'm going to make them in China. I'm going to have to spend a bunch more time in China.
Sure.
Right. But so I hired a bunch of world champion carvers, and a lot of them, well, some of them are some of my best friends now. It's another reason why I moved to Port Clinton is because we'll go to my house tonight, and I'll show you where both of them live. They're my neighbors.
Oh, nice.
They're
Sweet.
actually best friends and neighbors. And it's Dick Rohde and Rick Johansson,
Oh.
multi-time world champions. And Dick Rohde carved a majority of the green headgear decoys. He
Yep.
did the smooth carving, and I'd get it in textured. So I draw
Do
all
the
the
details.
sketching, all the feather detail, and
Yep.
do all that on there because I was in charge of getting the paint done.
Yep.
And just because you carve a decoy doesn't mean you can paint it.
Right.
And so I would design the painting process to where you could duplicate it over and over and over again in mass production to where if you could do it once,
You can
it's
do it a
repeatable.
bunch. Yep.
And so it's because I was the one traveling back and forth and not figuring it all out. I knew what we could do and what we couldn't do.
So you're going to China to show them how to paint them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. I
that's what
spent,
you're doing.
the year I went 157 days, I spent 100 days sitting in a paint line from, 7 o'clock in the morning till 9, 10 o'clock at night sometimes. And I'm talking about hot and humid. You think it's hot and
Real
humid out there?
sweatshop.
No, this is like 7 o'clock in the morning in China.
Oh,
I'm
my
talking
God.
about it's humid. It's so humid there. And plus there's, in a lot of places there's pollution.
Yep.
But I remember I stayed in this our apartment over there for, I was probably there 3 or 4 weeks. And one day the wind changed, it kind of got a cool period, and some sunshine came in, and there was a huge mountain range right there that I hadn't seen in 3
You've
weeks.
never seen it?
I never
Oh
knew
my
it
God.
even existed.
Yeah, right. What's
And it
that?
wasn't, I mean, it's just right there.
Yeah,
Never even
right.
knew. And, but I spent a lot of time understanding what they could do and what
Yeah.
they couldn't do, and designing the paint mask and the process.
Yeah.
So when I send a decoy over there, I go, step 1, this is what you paint. Step 2, this is what you paint. And I would design it to
Yep.
paint certain colors in a certain frequency,
Yep.
a certain order, to make sure you cut down on overspray and get the right color patterns and stuff like that. So I would not only send them the decoy carved and say, you make the mold and here's the paint sample, but then I would process it out, show them this is the steps that you do.
Okay.
And the people that I we hired, we had a company over there called Avery Overseas, and we had 20, 25 employees there, full time.
Yep.
And those people, actually the person, Thomas Wu, that ran that company, and my right-hand girl there that ran all the decoy, Simi, still works for me today. When I
nice.
left Greenhead Gear, they left too.
Oh.
When we started Avian X. So them two together, and Ice is our other girl, those 3 people there, Thomas and Simi, have been making decoys with me as a team for 22 years now.
Oh, shit. Nice.
So now I don't have to send that process.
Yeah,
I
right.
send a decoy over there, it's painted.
They know what to do.
They know what to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Who came up with flocking?
It was actually, you remember Perry Northcutt?
I don't.
So he was a friend of Latchall's, and
Yeah.
he lived out in the Pacific Northwest. And he had a company and a little product called Black Widow Flocking. Look it up online sometime.
Okay.
And he didn't invent it. I don't know. You know, it could have been some of the original hardcore guys, Corey. and
Oh,
those
yeah, I forget
guys.
about those. Because I thought that Avery, your guys' decoys
We
were the first
perfected
flocked
it.
one. Yeah.
We perfected it.
Okay, yeah.
But then Perry Northcutt had this, I can't remember if Perry come up with it, or it was kind of a thing. It originated out there in the Northwest.
Yeah,
And I think
okay.
the original hardcore guys were doing it, but they were using a flocking machine. That's a totally different deal. They were
Yeah,
hand flocking,
Yeah,
which
they're
is,
just fluff powder in them, basically.
it doesn't work that. I mean, it's
Right.
better than paint.
Right, right.
But, and then Perry come out with this kit called Black Widow Flocking. And then, so we started doing it. And we were doing Bigfoot heads and stuff like that at
Mm-hmm.
that point. Those were in the 90s.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you go to China and you're starting in a factory, there's flocking everywhere
Right.
on kids' toys and things like that.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering about
So
the
what's-
Foley flocking, the full
Yeah,
decoy.
so when I went
Yeah.
over there, when it comes to fully flock, we were
The first ones.
Yeah, we were
Yeah,
the first to do
that's
it.
kind of
Yep,
what I meant.
yep, 100%.
Yeah. Like, why not on the head? Why not the whole body? You know?
Yeah, so think about, understand how flocking works?
Yeah, I just flocked some of my DSDs the other day.
How'd you do it?
I put black glue on and then over a bucket and just kind of.
Yeah, so that's not how you flock.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what I mean. So to do it correctly, when you put it on, so a flocking is a fiber.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's different millimeter flockings, lengths, right? And so you had to, if you get too long, it looks really good, but you couldn't paint it. So like on the neck and stuff, we use a little longer
Oh,
flocking.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
But on the body, you couldn't use
They
a
gotta
long
be
flocking
little.
because you couldn't paint it. If you
Yeah.
painted it, the paint would eventually come off. and
That
kinda
does
wear
make
down.
sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you put it in an electric static box, when you charge it, so there's a negative and a positive in there, and the flocking is laying on the bottom of this system, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you spray your decoy with glue.
Yeah.
You stick it in and shut the lid, and you push on a pedal. When you push on a pedal, it's got electric charge that goes in
Powders
here,
it, basically.
and it makes this flocking start dancing off the floor.
Okay.
And it energizes it, and it's flying around. But when it flocking flies around, it's not flying sideways; it's flying like an arrow.
Okay.
When you flock by hand, when you're dropping it on there, it's falling at all different angles, and most of the time, it's falling flat. So if this is your head in glue,
Yeah.
when that fiber of flocking that's exaggerated this long,
Right,
when
right,
it
right.
lands flat.
Yep.
But when you flock professionally in a flocking deal, it's flying like an arrow. And it
Okay.
hits, and it's like hair on your head,
Stick straight out. Yeah.
sticks straight up. That's why you can't get that really fuzzy, really soft looking
Yeah, okay.
feel by hand flocking.
Right,
Unless
okay.
you have that ability, you're not going to get what you can get
Yeah.
professionally done.
Right, right.
So we made big boxes, so we flocked the entire body, and
Mm-hmm.
we come back and we tried paint, we tried dye.
Yeah.
We did a bunch of stuff, and there's a bunch of there's a couple secrets that we know.
Yep.
Other people may know about it now.
Yeah.
All things have legs in China.
Right.
But I spent so much time there, I figured some stuff out that a lot of people didn't know for a long period of time. Made our durability, our flocking durability better, made
Yep.
it so you can clean it, made it so you can paint it.
Yep,
There's
yep.
a lot of stuff going on there that is beyond the hidden eye.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so you go from the Avery decoys, and you have zinc calls, and then you start Avian X. So you leave Avery, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to make 6 different postures here.
Yeah.
Or how many postures for the honker decoy, I'm just saying. Because
Yeah.
I know you got all the duck decoys and stuff too.
Yeah.
But, so then you're like,
Honkers were the first, actually the turkey decoys, Avian X turkey decoys, the LCDs, the original ones.
yeah,
And our honkers were our first decoys we made.
really?
Our honkers we did exclusive with Cabela's,
Yep.
the year 1. And that's the one we talked about when I
Yeah,
met
yeah.
you up at
Yep.
Mankato.
Yep,
Had the round
yep.
bases. We made those round bases 1 year, and we sold all the decoys to Cabela's. Bought our entire inventory for the year. We did 100% exclusive with Cabela's.
Yep.
And
I remember that.
it was honker decoys is what we were doing. And so we started off on that. I resigned from Avery in 2009, November 2009, and I needed like a break. You know, I've been traveling so much, I just like needed some time to figure out what I wanted to do. But this is something that most people would be like, what? Because you think about, you own your own business, you know, you're making money, you're doing this, you're doing that, or whatever. So I worked for Zink Calls basically for a year. And never touched decoys. I needed a break and
Yeah.
try to sort it out. And I was like, man, I know way too much about making decoys
Right.
to just turn a blind eye to it.
Correct, yeah.
You know, I learned so much since I had spent so much time away from my family.
From your time over there? Yeah.
Over there, I was like, man, I got to make money
Yeah.
doing this. And I got to make a living for my family doing it. So, but in 2009, so think about that. I started Zink Calls in 2000. The first paycheck that me personally ever took from Zink Calls was in 2009,
Really?
December of 2009. So for 9 years, I never collected a check.
Yeah.
My wife got paid. Now, I expense stuff through there and stuff like that. It wasn't
Yeah.
like whatever, but I just rolled all the money back into it.
Yeah, correct.
Everything we made, because
Yeah.
I was making my living at Avery Greenhead Gear. Everything rolled right back over into growing zinc. And that's the reason why we grew so quick, so fast, so quick, is simply because I wasn't taking money out, I was
Yeah.
putting it in.
Right, right.
More people, hire more people, buy the best cameras you can do.
Yep.
Let's go to the best places that waterfowl hunt,
Yep.
new editing equipment, new CNC machines, new building,
Everything.
whatever. Let's
Yeah.
do it. And I didn't like to, we weren't big on payments. So we pretty
Correct,
much paid
yeah.
everything, a
Yeah.
majority of it cash,
Yeah.
just pay. And so owning Zink Calls for 9 years, basically, before I ever took a check.
Finally pay yourself.
Yeah. And then I started Avian X, and started working on stuff late 2010. Went to see Bass Pro 2011-ish, and Cabela's, and then started selling turkey decoys. And
Gotcha.
so the first shipping year of Avian X was 2011.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I remember I bought Cabela's out of all their round base,
Yeah.
fully flocked Avian X's because they're like, we're getting rid of them because they're doing square bases or something like
Yeah.
that. People didn't like the round bases. They're too tippy or
They're
something.
too tippy.
Yeah.
That's what you get when you're late for the process and you think one
Right.
thing, and we
Right.
got to it, and it's like,
Yeah. But I was just like, fucking give them here. I bought
Yeah.
them all. And all the Cabela's in Minnesota, they shipped them to one store, and then I
Yeah.
went and picked them up a couple days later. I was
Yeah.
like, thank you.
yep.
So I used those for a while, but so now everybody knows you sold Zink Calls and Avian X. What was the process of that? How'd you think, like, one day you're like, well, I'm gonna sell it, or I want to sell it?
No, I never
or,
thought about it.
You know what I mean,
actually.
or what?
Yeah, I never really thought about it. During that period of time, acquisition was a thing of starting to happen big time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people were trying to acquire other companies to grow big conglomerates. It was kind of the thing that was happening. It was happening all over the industry.
Yeah.
And it was not uncommon to every other week to get a letter in the mail or a phone call from a big company say, hey, we want to purchase Avian X and Zink Calls. You know,
Jeez.
you're willing, you want to? No,
Yeah.
not interested. I just throw them in the trash. Just keep
Yeah.
right out working.
Yeah.
And I got a phone call from a guy. Actually, it was Matt Moret, one of my employees. And the guy, was like my right-hand guy on the turkey side thing, guy I trusted. And Matt and I had been friends. He goes, man, Ryan Busbus he's been wearing me out. He wants to talk about buying. I'm like, man, I don't know. He said, it's worth a phone call. They do good things. And they had Wild Game Innovations and the Synergy brands. And at that time, man, everything they had touched had turned to gold. Like everything they bought had grew.
Yep.
And they had just merged with Plano, which is, fish and tackle boxes and things like that out of Plano, Illinois, gun cases, things like that. So it's like, well, I didn't really want to sell, but I will say at that time, the risk was getting greater and greater and greater because our business had grown to, at that point, very sizable.
Right.
And Sports Warehouse had an issue. Went out of business, owed a lot of people money.
Right.
Gander Mountain,
Yep.
went out of business. They owed
Another
us
one.
a shitload of money.
Yep.
We never got any money out of that either.
Damn.
I'm like, we were like one major retailer, like a Cabela's, for instance, would have went under, we were screwed.
Yeah, that was it.
We did so much business. I'm like, if that check does not come,
Right.
we're done.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so I met with them, and they had a really good story about what they wanted to do, and it wasn't a BS deal. I mean, they were legit, like what they wanted to do and all that, and it was exciting because I wanted more for our employees, to be honest with you. When you're a small family-owned business, you can only pay people so much, and your benefits, and you just don't have the leverage that you do when you have a conglomerate, to where, like right now, I say at GSM, I'm guessing, but we're 500 employees plus ish, something like that.
Yeah.
Very large. By the time I would say it's somewhere around there. I don't know the quite number. I could be off on there, but it's very large.
Yeah.
So when you start buying insurance packages and things like that, and you're talking 300 plus people, you're getting a deal. When you're talking about 20,
Yeah.
you're getting hosed.
Yeah, correct.
And everything was starting to add up, and just the liability there. And I wanted to really move forward into clothing and accessories, and Dawn and I, we didn't have any investors. We were bankrolling everything. It was all our money.
Yeah.
And so we had a conversation. I was like, you know what? This is the right team. I knew about 10 or 15 people that worked at Plano Synergy that were absolutely studs.
Okay.
Like great people, really good at what they did. And I was like, man, this is the opportunity. When you're growing and developing a company, and maybe some of the employees realize that, or maybe some of them always thought I was full of shit, but I had employees who made more money than I made at Avian X and Zink, for sure. Now, it's because I was rolling my money back in.
Correct.
I didn't need any more money. I don't do anything for money.
Right.
I do it because I want to do it.
Yeah.
Money's important, but I do it mostly because I want to do it.
Yeah, and passion to it, too.
And yeah, I have
Helps.
passion for it. And I never designed any product to make money, if that makes sense. I always designed it because I thought it was a loophole or an area in the system that needed fixed.
Yep.
To be selfishness to make my hunt better.
Correct.
But if it makes my hunt better, it makes other people's. So
That's
it
right.
was just a working relationship that worked.
Awesome.
And so I think it was the right opportunity. It was the right price, and it was really good for our family. And originally, I thought it was really good for our employees, and it was for quite a while.
Yeah.
But like all good things, just things weren't happening, they weren't growing, they weren't doing what they thought they were able to do.
Right.
So they ended up selling, and they sold to GSM, who owns us now, owns Avian X
Yep.
and Zink calls. And hindsight's 2020, and I wish GSM would have been bigger and the one knocking on my door, because they're a great company.
Yeah.
And they're trying to grow, and they're very aggressive at new products, and kick-ass company.
Yeah.
And so right now we're in a conglomerate to where I'd say we're probably the second largest conglomerate in the whole outdoor space right now.
Oh, shit.
We have 60 plus brands from hunting, a lot of hunt brands. We have fishing brands. It's kind of our new hot button, buying a lot of fishing brands. We got 3 knife companies, lighting companies, and it's a fast race car.
Yeah.
And we're in acquisition mode. I'm doing now what I thought we were going to be able to do at Plano Synergy right away.
Yeah.
To be honest with
That's
you.
awesome. That sounds like it worked out. That's
It
pretty good.
eventually worked out, but there
Yeah.
was some roads there where I'm like,
Yeah.
just like, what the hell happened here?
No more tuning calls, though.
Yeah,
None of that,
I don't
though.
do calls no more. Yeah.
Got out of that. Yeah, so that's what you're doing these days then.
Yep.
And then you told me that you and your wife own a pizza place.
Yep.
Which is a fun
We
fact.
own a little tavern in town. It's called Bell Mel Tavern in Port Clinton, Ohio. It was started in 1936, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a local watering hole. She wanted out of the corporate world.
Yeah.
she loves working for herself. And,
Yep.
you know, when she was working at Plano Center, she did it for, I think, 3 years, 4 years, something like
Yeah.
that. She's like, had enough.
I got to get out of here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. So we bought it, and that's her castle.
Nice, yeah. When he told me that, yeah, we own a pizza place. I'm like, what is it, Zink's Pizza?
Yeah.
That'd be a sweet shirt.
Yeah.
But so you're just doing the Ducks Unlimited stuff, right? Filming.
Yep.
You're still doing the filming and stuff, though.
Yep.
I mean,
usually
DVDs are long
host
gone now.
between
So
4 and 5 DU TV shows every year.
yeah.
Travel around, and we get to go hunting. I try to go hunt with a lot of my past friends, people I've hunted with for a long time or whatever. I organize. I actually have a call tomorrow when we go to the airport. I'm going to be talking probably to DU about where we're heading this coming year and kind of the thought process behind it. But I enjoy that. I've been associated and done stuff with Ducks Unlimited for, I kind of handled some of the marketing stuff there when I was at Avery Greenhead Gear, some of the licensing stuff.
Okay.
And so I have had some long-standing friends inside the four walls of Ducks Unlimited. Obviously a great cause and very strong. And DU business is really good right now. The amount of money that they're making and putting back into land and conservation's at an all-time record high.
Nice.
Yep.
That's
I think
awesome.
here in
That's
the
what
state
it's
of
about,
Ohio, I
too.
can't remember what the number is, but I think the state of Ohio this year, DU is going to spend about $2 million on the landscape right here in the state of Ohio.
Awesome.
Like $2.2 million.
Dang.
Yep.
Hopefully they're
That's
your
some
neighbors.
that's some real dollars.
Yeah, that's pretty huge.
Yeah.
Now I know we keep kind of jumping back and forth, but I also remembered that you also made like a camouflage too, didn't you? You've designed a few or
Yep.
some?
3 or 4, three with one color variation. So when we were making ground blinds at Greenhead Gear and Avery, we wanted a little different camo, right? Some camos were too dark; they just weren't quite what we needed. So I designed, developed killer weed. Which is a nice grass pad. It's a great ground blind pattern.
Yep.
It just blends in. It's a little light for like pea fields or work fields, but for any type of stubble field, corn stubble, anything like that, wheat stubble, it's money.
Yeah, great
Blends
camo.
perfect. And so there was 2 versions of killer weed. There was a brighter one and the standard killer weed. And then I made marsh grass, which is a cattail pattern.
Yep.
And then I made buckbrush, which was a buckbrush willow / pattern for the backwaters, flood timber hunting, things like that.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, we've been chirping for a little bit here.
Yeah.
We could probably shut her down, but I got one last question, I guess.
Yep.
If they were going to sell you back Zink calls, would you ever take her back?
Yeah, I almost had her bought back a couple years ago. I thought I was going to get it back. It's kind of it's a right price, yes.
Right,
but it's
right.
kind of like when you're a book author and you write books. Once you write a book, you don't want to write the same book again.
Right. Yeah, I get you.
And when you write a new book, it's about something else. It's a new chapter, it's a new thing or whatever. And so I'm not saying I wouldn't be interested in buying Zink back or whatever, but in my opinion, we kind of already did it, and I believe personally that I did it at a pretty high level.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, we had 200 pro
Yes, you
staffers.
did.
We had TV shows.
Yep.
We were making close to 20,000 custom calls a year, and then probably I'd say 400,000 or 500,000 injection molded calls a year. So then we got in the turkey business. So we were rolling. Our business was big.
Yeah,
And
sounds like it.
we just had a lot of stuff going, and we did it at such a high level. I think it would be tough to do it at a high level today with all the digital marketing and all the different things. It's a different monster, and I'm 54 years old, not 24.
Right.
And so a lot of things that you understand and Gunner understands about the digital marketing is just like, it's not, number one, I don't understand it. Number two, most importantly, I don't want to understand it.
That's correct.
Right?
A lot of guys say that.
I'm to the point where I'm like, I just want to go duck hunt. I want to come out here and hunt with my family, my friends, and,
that's right.
and go around and do that. So I'm not saying I wouldn't. I would be more apt to do something at a lower scale, direct to consumer, high quality kind of deal, lower volume, and just kind of like enjoy doing it versus a business. You know what I mean?
Not having to worry about making 50,000 of them, or 20,000 or whatever. Yeah.
I love making calls. I mean, it was my passion and designing and developing them. So maybe one day when I retire, maybe when I'm in my 60s, I might have a little Zink line or something at some point. But
that'd be cool.
Right now I'm pretty happy. I get to spend. But my passion now has become land management.
Yep.
And whether it be waterfowl, which is a primary, or a whitetail, I enjoy doing the conservation work. And I always tell everybody that hunts here in Gunner, I said, the day we come here and they're not already coming in, and the day we shoot a limit and we drive down the road, then they're not coming in, is the day we've done something wrong.
Right.
we always call it, don't hunt for today, hunt for tomorrow.
Yep.
And we come, even when the season or splits close, I come every night, watch the ducks.
Yep.
And to be able to, I guess it's kind of like giving back
Yep.
to the standpoint of this property was here. I'm sure there was ducks here at some point in a rainstorm and shoot water to field
Sure,
or whatever. But
yeah.
to come in here and see what we've been able to create, and we have another spot we lease and another spot we bought on the other side, pretty close to my house, 142 acres over there, that we last year was the first year we hunted at, but we did all the dirt work and lined everything up, and to see that develop and to see the birds coming in there. And then as you look around here, all these whitetails that we've been able to, we've killed all these on our own property. And so I think conservation, my next chapter, instead of being, trying to buy the zinc calls back, would be, this
Conservation
dedicate
side
my
of it.
time to land management and create some family wealth from buying land and creating something that has value moving forward. It's kind
Absolutely.
of my passion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I guess I lied about the last question. Where was your favorite? Where's like your favorite place to duck and goose hunt?
Right where we're at.
Right
now.
here.
Yeah.
I figured you'd say that. Yep.
Now, no, there's no place like home. It's like, where's your favorite bed in the world? So I stayed in some $1,200-$1,500 a night hotels and this and that, whatever. What's your favorite one?
Right.
My one at home.
That's right.
Right.
But if you were going to take a trip, you know what I'm saying?
I would say out of all the places I ever traveled, Saskatchewan is one of my favorite provinces. I think things have changed so much through guiding and outfitting, and you can be testament to that with what you guys do and the amount of clients you run. But outfitting has become a much larger business. I enjoyed freelancing,
Yeah.
So for the longest time, we never went with a guide or an outfitter, ever. We would go up there, knock on doors, get permission. We would
correct.
always freelance. That's what I love to do, go figure it out and do it. So Saskatchewan is pretty precious because I had so many memorable hunts up there. But if I had to pick one spot, every place I've ever been, and it's not like that now because of outfitting. I'm not blaming them, but it's just reality because
But
we
it's
got so
their
much
fault,
land.
so.
Is Oklahoma.
Oklahoma? Really?
Yeah, and it's not even close.
Really? I would have never guessed that one.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You like
it used to
shooting
be
them?
unreal.
Yeah. You like shooting little geese, though, don't you?
Lessers, yeah.
Yeah.
But the duck hunt was
Yeah.
unbelievable,
Really?
unbelievable. It
That's
was many a
awesome.
days we go out in the morning and shoot, because I remember one morning we were hunting with the Townsend boys, and there was a waterway cut through this wheat field. It was a real deep, heavy waterway, and we put the A-frames there, and we were pretty much eye level. I don't know if you're on that hunt or not, G. We're eye level with the dirt, so we set a rig out. We were blowing our goose calls. They would not finish, right? They would come. It's like it was just something a little bit off. Lessers can be sometimes goofy, right?
Right.
I told the boys, I said, hey, and I got this term from Grouse, hey, bud, nobody's home. Because he liked to kill specs, but specs in Canada can be sometimes a bitch to call.
Yeah.
He goes, hey, bub, here they come. Speculators, nobody's home. And I said, hey, we're not calling. And they just did it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, right in a hole. So
Yeah.
we had 3 goes. We killed 113 in 3 goes.
Damn.
And we killed Lessers, Ross, Snows, Blues, and Specs in 3 goes. So it was not uncommon to go have a morning goose hunt, kill whatever your limit would be with some whiteys.
Yeah.
There wasn't a ton of whites, so you'd kill some.
Yeah.
But we would kill between 70 and 120, 100, 125 geese every morning,
Nice.
and then go and eat and shoot 50 to 75 drake mallards
That's,
and pintails.
Yeah, that's heaven right there.
Yeah. Max was, took him in training when he was 6 months old. I picked him up when he was 9 months old. So he'd been there 3 months. I said, hey, I'm going to take a trip to Oklahoma. You think he'd be ready to go? He goes, yeah, sure, he'll be ready to go. So I picked him up. It was the year we designed the Avian X A-frames. That was
Okay.
before they were introduced. I had this concept because I had made A-frames when I was young, probably in my late 20s, that were mobile out of fast grass. And when the geese would get tough, I would use... Hey, tell him to give me 10 minutes. I know we should shut the garage door. Old duck hunter Lee Henry just rolled in here. That's my neighbor there. He's a hell of a old boy right there.
I gotcha. You
Yeah,
got the waterfall
he's a
shirt on.
historian of waterfowl hunting around
Is he?
here. I'm telling you. Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
he'll sit down after.
Oh man, he's something else. He hunts down in Arkansas. He's a great guy.
Oh, yeah.
But we went on this trip. I was gone 3 weeks, and and the trip was to test the A-frames.
Yep.
And we came back, and my trainer's like, well, how'd he do? And I said, well, he did really good. You know, he did really well, actually. And he's
Yeah.
like, well, how, you know, you pick up 50 or 100? I goes, well, he picked up 1,256.
Shit.
He goes, what? I said, yeah, he picked up 1,256. He's like, there's no way. I said, we'd have picked up more, but it was another dog.
Yeah, right. Jesus. Yeah, that makes a good dog.
That makes a good dog, yeah. So Oklahoma was kick ass.
Oklahoma's a spot. All right. Well, we can wrap this up, man. Neighbors are stopping by. Whenever you have the garage door open, the neighbors stop by.
Oh, yeah,
Fred
the
says,
garage door's open to the Zink Ranch. People stop in. They want to talk ducks.
Exactly. Well, yeah, we can close this out. I just want to say, dude, your 24/7 DVDs, everything you've done for the industry, and just everything you've done. Those DVDs to me, and I know a lot of other guys in my younger days, they're our favorite movies of all time.
We sell a lot of them.
I can't tell you how many times I fell asleep to those things over and over and over again. That was life.
I kind of grew up watching the Duck Commander ones.
Yeah,
what I mean? When I was young,
sure.
that was my juice, right?
Yep.
Duckman 1, Duckman 2. And
Yep.
I know Phil and those guys for a long time. And Warren Coco, who was on Duckman 1, is a very, very close friend of mine. I go down there. I run all Go Devil boats and go down there and hunt with him and his family, Lance and Mason. And it's very similar. You know, I kind of grew up watching him shoot ducks on that Duckman 1. It was like,
yeah, those are classics.
I understand
those are
that.
classics of classics.
Dude, I remember I'd be tuning duck calls, because at that point, and I'd be playing that thing and make me want to just grab my gun.
Yep.
And there wasn't flooded timber within 500 miles of my place, but I was like looking around for it, just.
Exactly.
I get it.
Yeah, we had a couple times where we'd buy the new blinds like a couple days before goose opener, and we'd lay in the blinds and watch the videos between you and Foils and Stahl and stuff. But like I said, dude, I can't thank you enough. You basically, you literally molded me into who I am between you three guys. So
that's awesome.
I appreciate it.
I'm glad you come down here.
Yeah, I'm glad you had me, man, for sure.
Sounds good.
So, all right, Freddie, that's it for the Four Score podcast with Fred Zink.
Thank you.
Let's get on that boat and drink beer, huh?
That's what I'm saying. Bush light?
That's right.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, guys. Boom.